In this video, I will be going over two good personal statements and one weaker one, and we will analyze them together. I will be constantly asking myself different questions in my analysis, and hopefully with this exercise you can do the same to your own personal statements, and so that you can write as good or even better personal statement than the two good essays that I'm about to share. So, just as a quick background before we get started, I am an international student who transferred to Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley a few years ago. And ever since I was admitted, I had read lots and lots of personal statements of my friends. And from this experience, I came to realize that it's actually really easy to identify who will get into the school and who will not prior to the decision date. There are just some telltale signs in the personal statements of a good essay and some signs of the weaker ones. And obviously, GPA and activities are really important too, but they're usually very easy to measure because of the achievements, because the achievements in there is very explicit and very quantifiable. That is also one of the main reasons why personal statements are very tricky, and a lot of people underestimate the importance of personal statements in applications. And if you see a 4.0 student who took up lots of activities, be it part-time job, volunteer activities, or even involvements in student organizations, and still got rejected from UC Berkeley, you can look at his or her personal statement if you have the chance, and you'll understand why he or she was rejected, because it probably is the reason why the particular candidate was denied the application, the offer. And with that, let's analyze our first personal statement. I want you to download our personal statement samples and read them first before going forward, before we go forward to this video. So go to the link down on our description box and go to the welcome tab on our Facebook page. And after liking our page, you should be able to download the first sample essay. So I want you to pause this video, read this personal statement, and think what's good and what's bad before I tell you my analysis. When reading the personal statement, always ask yourself this question. Is he answering the question? Is this sentence redundant? Does this paragraph make sense? And with that, why don't you go ahead and pause the video until you have read the essay. So what do you think about the essay? Is he answering the question? If yes, which did he answer? Did he talk about personal quality, talent, accomplishment? If you have read the essay carefully, you will see that this essay actually answered multiple questions. He showcased determination to rise from the bottom 10% of the school to the top 5% of the class. He answered experience because this experience showed that he can actually achieve his goals if he wants to. He also showed quality in terms of being able to overcome challenges. And if you read every single line, there is not one line that is redundant. And this is the kind of exercise that you should emulate when you write your personal statement, asking questions like, is this essay answering the question? Does it flow well? Is there any particular sentence that is redundant? Aside from this, there is a more subtle quality about this essay that makes it good. And by the way, I haven't actually talked about what happened to this particular applicant. He got into the Haas School of Business as an international transfer student a few years ago. And one particular thing that makes this essay really good is the organization is actually very easy to follow. Number one, he talked about the problem. Number two, he talked about success in overcoming the problem. And number three, he talked about his future goal. And this is very typical of an essay that allowed people to enter to top universities, organized in that manner: problem, success in overcoming the problem, and future goal. That is obviously not the only way, but structuring this way makes it very easy to follow. So now I would like to walk you through an essay that is not to be followed. This is actually the third prompt from Berkeley Haas, and let's go over it together. At Haas, we value our defining principles: confidence without attitude, question the status quo, student always, beyond yourself. Pick one principle, and why is this principle important, and how do you identify with it? Let's begin with the first paragraph. Humans are the students of life. Ever since humans were born to this world, they have carried their responsibility to never stop learning. Babies learn to adapt to the environment outside their mother's womb and to recognize new faces. As they grow, they learn to crawl. Then they learn to stand, walk, and run. Over time, they keep improving themselves so that they can run faster and faster to get to the point they aim at. So, what's the problem with this essay? See if you can catch that. If you notice, this particular candidate is not answering the question. The question was to pick one principle, and this particular candidate has not picked any principles. In fact, she has talked about something other than herself. She talked about humans, she talked about babies and their mothers, and nothing about this particular candidate's unique ability or quality, or giving out reasons why he or she should get into Haas. And don't get me wrong, this particular candidate is really, really smart. She has a 4.0 GPA, lots of activities, and even though she's an international student, this shouldn't be an excuse for a poor essay, especially for the most important essay of your life. And a lot of applicants also quote famous people and say why it's good, why it's intellectual, why they're smart, which is kind of the same problem as this particular candidate. So it is something to watch out for when you're writing your own personal statement, because a lot of people have actually tried to quote other people and talk a lot of things about them, and sometimes it can be effective, but you need to link it in such a way that it talks about you. Okay, let's move on to the next paragraph. When I arrived in the US, I felt like a newborn who had to learn adapting to the whole new environment and getting to know new people. My life here is so different than my secured life in Indonesia, in which I had my family to depend on, my friends to hang out with, my drivers and servants who were always available for me whenever I needed them. It happened until I came here. I was challenged to step out of my comfort zone, leaving behind my princess-like life and do everything by myself. Hence, I got a lot of learning experiences such as making new friends, cooking, house cleaning, as well as taking buses and BART. When I began to drive and own a car, I learned to take care of it myself. So, what's the problem here? There are several lines in this paragraph that actually raised my eyebrow. She said on the second line, "My life here is so different than my secured life in Indonesia, in which I had my family to depend on, my friends to hang out with, my drivers and servants who were always available for me whenever I needed them." Now on this sentence, I actually understand what this particular candidate mean, because I also came from Indonesia and labor there is cheap. So we tend to have our private drivers, maids, etc. But if an American read this, he or she wouldn't understand what this means. He or she might think, this writer is such a spoiled student. And another sentence that raised my eyebrows is the last sentence where she said, "I got a lot of learning experiences such as making friends." So what do you mean by experience in making new friends? So do you mean you've never made any friends before? And then this candidate continued by saying, "When I began to drive and own a car, I learned to take care of it myself." And again, me as the reader, I would think, what's so special about that? Everyone in the US take care of their own car. It is nothing special about the writer. So these are the kind of questions that you need to think, that you need to keep asking yourself. I know I've been repeating this over and over again, but it's really important to analyze every single line, every single word of your most important essay of your life. Okay, let's go on. On the third paragraph, she said, "With my studies in Diablo Valley College and activities I participate in, I'm enriched inside out. I burn my networks with people from different countries, and in clubs I learned to be a democratic leader whose jobs are both to lead and to serve the members. My participation in community service taught me to be aware of others' sufferings and contribute towards bringing some comfort to the underprivileged and needy in society. By working part-time, I gain a valuable lesson that life is tough and people have to work hard to be prosperous." So, what's the problem here? On the first sentence, she said, "I am enriched inside out." So what do you mean by being enriched inside out? And when she said the activities I participate in, which activities enrich her? What student organization was that? How did she get enriched? We need more details. And then she went on, "In clubs, I learned to be a democratic leader whose jobs are both to lead and to serve the members." And what do you mean by democratic leader? What club was that? What activity in that club led you to this learning process? And then on the last paragraph, she said, "By working part-time, I get a valuable lesson that life is tough and people have to work hard to be prosperous." In this particular sentence, the question that you should be asking is, why would working part-time show her that life is tough? She did not go to a war zone. She did not overcome poverty. Life is easy for her because she has a car and she could just live by working part-time. Don't get me wrong, there might be a particular incident in her job that made her realize that life is tough, but just by reading this, I don't know what it was. Okay, so let's just skip to the last paragraph. She said, I realize I have greatly improved intellectually, emotionally, and socially. So, same question. What do you mean by intellectually, emotionally, and socially? Are you implying you were emotional in the past? Are you implying you weren't sociable at all in the past? And then she continues, yet I'm not fully satisfied with all the achievements I've made. I haven't reached my goal of becoming a successful social entrepreneur who dedicates her life to the good of others, especially those who are in need. And another problem here. So what do you mean by you haven't reached your goal of becoming a successful social entrepreneur? Of course you haven't. You haven't even tried. And then she continued, to make it come true, I will continuously learn and enhance myself with the knowledge earned from Haas. With his principal student always, I believe Haas is the right place for me to continue my journey of lifelong learning. So, in this last sentence, she finally answered the question. And this is a big problem because the question is asking, pick one principle and say why is this principle important. And from reading the first paragraph, second paragraph, etc., it was very difficult for me to follow. I did not know which particular core principle is this candidate answering. Was it confidence without attitude? Was it student always? It would have been so much better if she had answered it right from the start. And another very common problem that I would like to bring out is particular to international students is the following paragraph. And before I share this paragraph, I want you to realize this. Many of the international students in the States are well off, which is why they're able to afford much of the more expensive fees. And in many instances, a lot of their parents have their own successful businesses, which in turn allow their students to participate in internships that many of the average candidate cannot. And they can take part in helping their father's accounting, helping him to do research, etc. So let me show you this paragraph. Over the summer, I had the opportunity to do an internship in my parents' retail company. I was fortunate to receive the chance to do budgeting for the new branches in which they plan to expand next month, making journal entries and also plan their marketing campaign for the next period. So what's the problem here? The problem with this candidate is very simply, he is lying. He is lying, he's not saying the truth. And there are lots and lots of candidates who try to exaggerate their role in their parents' internship and they think they can get away with it and the readers wouldn't be able to know. But it's actually very easy to spot if a person is lying on a personal statement. For example, budgeting for new branches require very specific skills that a 2-week or even 3-month intern shouldn't be able to do. An intern shouldn't be able to do any kind of marketing campaign planning, especially if the company is big. They wouldn't allow this particular intern to take such a big responsibility. So, how do you make it seem real? And the answer is actually very simple. The answer is to talk about the truth. Saying what you really did over the summer in your internship and include that in. The readers don't expect much. We don't expect you to improve sales by 100% or to make big budgeting plans. And as an intern, being involved and learning a lot about a business or doing something minor is good enough. So finally, let's discuss our final essay. This is another very good essay, and this particular candidate was accepted in UC Berkeley for a communications major. In fact, among the 40 or so personal statements I read so far, this may well be the most well-written personal statements out there. And this is for prompt 2, and let's go ahead and read them together. My mother used to tell me that I was named Nakula after a knight, seen as master of horses, from the mythical Hindu story the Mahabharata. I believe I am living up to my name. So, if you can see from these two paragraphs, the essay actually began very creatively. She showed her mastery of the language and interesting ways of presenting the essay. And the one sentence paragraph in her second paragraph gave it some of the extra push, the positive effect. With an interest in exploring new territories, I established the American Red Cross this semester in Diablo Valley College with the vision of encouraging a more socially aware and responsible DVC community who will respond to the needs of the society. And if you see here, this particular writer is very specific. She did not say, I established a club, but she said, I established the American Red Cross Club this semester. And she stated what her vision was. And it is very easy for me as a reader to envision and to understand what she's talking about. So you do not need to, on your essay, to say out what your vision is, but in this particular essay, it really fits in nicely. Moving on, I knew pioneering this club requires me to be an influential leader who can convince my members to believe in a vision greater than themselves, and to instill a sense of hope even when wagering on a pick six race where the chances of winning is around 1 to a million. And I particularly love this sentence because she really tied everything together. She used words that relates to Master of Horses, which she got her name from, and the flow is just beautiful. So she continued by saying, thus, I refuse to be tamed by dismissal and disregard of some friends who bet my little Philly club would lose out to the more seasoned clubs in the stampede to win club members on the aggressively competitive club day because I consider a living racetrack uncharted was worse than discovering I'm a handicapper. And again, this particular paragraph is really strong because she continued to make the flow really well. She used the term stampede and leaving the racetrack uncharted, which continues to link all this essay into her first paragraph that she was named after the Master of Horses. And she does all this while explaining her experience in founding the American Red Cross, which all answers the question. So it was really effective in that sense. Moving on, despite the fact that our club had more than 100 student signups, our first event idea, an American Red Cross blood drive, was met with condescending laughter because more accomplished clubs had struggled and sometimes failed to host a successful campus-wide event. Here, this paragraph showcased a concrete example of the success, which is 100 student signups. And she compared it with other clubs to give a sense of how getting 100 student signups, what kind of achievement it really is. And you can go over the next few paragraphs. Let me see here. I think I shouldn't be going over the next 3 paragraphs because it's just a repeat of why the essay is really good. You can actually pause this video to read the next 3 paragraphs and study it for yourself. In fact, you should read it because of how good this essay is. But I just want to go on and summarize what we learned so far. So I know we really went through quickly on the first essay, but you can use the same exercise to understand why that particular candidate was accepted at a Haas school. And for the second essay, I want you to notice that she's actually basing it on a very simple idea, that she was successful in founding a club. That's why, that is what the essay is about. That is what the whole essay is about, in fact. And for the first essay, his idea revolves simply on achieving an academic success. And my point in saying this is that you shouldn't write about many ideas, and numerous essays that I read try to cover a lot of things, and sometimes so much things that the writer couldn't write in good details, and that perhaps is the problem that the second essay, the weaker essay was trying to deliver. And finally, the last thing that I want you to notice here is how organized both of the essays are, the good essays. And like I've mentioned before, it's number 1, the problem, number 2, the success in overcoming that problem, and number 3, the future goals. So with that, I hope this exercise has been useful for you, and hopefully you can emulate the similar ways in asking questions to your own essay. Good luck to those applying.